This episode is brought to you by Paycor, the HR and payroll software made for leaders. It's never been harder to recruit, hire, and engage workers. That's why HR leaders and frontline managers depend on Paycor for all things people management, from onboarding and performance reviews to compensation and benefits. Learn more at paycor.com/leaders.
Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Well, I've got some bad news for you, Josh. There were no referee or VAR conspiracies this weekend, so you and I are just left to talk about our game week scores and the football that happened. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. How do I feel about that? I thought we were coming in pretty hot on the VAR front, but a lot of other pods did like full 50-minute pods and then additional pods later on in the week in VR. So our little 5-minute segment, I think in the end, was pretty mild. This is the thing about going out on Sunday is we can't, I think mostly for the better, but we can't really take the temperature of everything when we go out there. So
we set the table, Josh.
That's true. We set the table. That's right. So game week 8 has concluded. We have another international break beginning, and yeah, it's another. I always feel like the second one in particular, like really, like we just another one. But well, at least we have there's are some actual stakes now. We've got the Euros coming next summer, and so I think I don't know, some of these matches are presumably European qualifiers, and we now know about the 2030 World Cup. It's going to be held in I think it's 47 different countries. So that's
all around the world. A literal World Cup.
Yeah, a literal World Cup. Just remember that great Euros, Brandon, that was held in like 30 places and had no vibe because it was spread across. Yeah. So, but anyway, 2030 is the. I mean, I'm glad they finally figured it out. And honestly, selfishly, it's at least it's in a time zone that we can wrap our heads around and kind of watch matches. Right, like Qatar was about as far east as you can go and still be able to watch matches at a reasonable hour. The Women's World Cup might as well not have happened from my perspective because it was in Australia. And even though we have a lot of Australian people that we interact with, it's just a tough time, right? I mean, matches are basically all in at 3:00 in the morning. So I'll take some Europe. I guess now we have these kickoff matches. Why am I talking about the World Cup? I don't know. Game week 8 has come and gone. Got an international break. It's a good time to take stock. We're now, I don't know, I guess we're about 20% of the way through the season. And we're doing what is I think, is it one of our most popular themes, or do I just like it personally?
I think you like it. People like it, but I know for a fact that you tell me all the time how much you look forward to doing Kings of the Game Week.
Well, I do. Yeah, I think it's something that I guess it's just, to me, it's very fun. It's a sort of, so for anyone who's ever listened before, basically several years ago, Budweiser was they only did it for one season. So they clearly didn't get out of it what they wanted to get out of it. But Budweiser was a sponsor.
Imagine that board meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do an ROI on Budweiser Kings of the Game Week.
Yeah, are they still sponsoring the FA Cup? I'm not sure, but they were some sort of sponsor for the Fantasy Premier League game. And the way that you saw their sponsorship was the Budweiser Kings of the Game Week. And the Kings of the Game Week was the best possible team you could have put together for that particular game week, right? So often it's like a funky formation, 5-4-1 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's basically, this is the best team you could have made if you had been able to see into the future.
Why Kings of the Game Week, though? Because Budweiser is the king of beers.
Yes,
and we all know this.
Yeah. So we loved the kind of corniness of Kings of the Game Week, and we decided to start reviewing the Kings of the Game Week every 8-10 weeks or so. And with the international break here, we felt it was time for and even though they don't even sponsor anymore, we keep that name alive because it's who doesn't love Kings of the Game Week, Brent? Who wouldn't want to be one after all?
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does. So we're going to take stock, look back at the first 8 weeks of the season, look at the best possible team you could have had for all 8 of those game weeks. It's a good chance to talk about some of the narrative threads that have developed this season. There's always some interesting things that pop up, some sort of like red herrings or MacGuffins, Brandon, whatever you want to call them, sort of things that pop up that make you think, oh, wow, like you'll see in game week 1, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Rafael Varane. They were the 2 highest point scorers. And that was that didn't last. I think we all know that didn't last. And so it's a chance to look at, but also you start to see some threads start to emerge where it's like, wow, Ollie Watkins, there he is. Or I don't know, certain like Kieran Trippier right around game week 5 starts to emerge and pop up and keep reappearing in these teams. So it's a good chance for us to look at what happened and hopefully it'll be fun. Brandon, before we do though, one thing that's maybe less fun, at least for me, is looking at my score for game week 8. I actually thought I might sneak a green arrow. I did not in the end. I finished on, I think it was 40. Let me double check it here. Yeah, I finished in 43 points. So I'm 1 below the average. And still kind of struggling to get that one kind of big game week. It's over 8, unfortunately. And it's a little, definitely I've never had a start like this before. And so I am not, I'm still learning how to. I don't think you have either, right? I mean, I don't know. A couple of years ago, I feel like you had a kind of rough start. And were you in the 3 millions though? I mean, I
certainly I've been.
Were you? Okay.
I mean, I'm catching up with you here week by week. I'm around 2.3
million. We're meeting in the middle, like we always do.
But I suppose we always think about where we end as opposed to where we begin. So do I remember having a rough start, or do I remember where I finished at the end of the season? And maybe I'm all about that journey, Josh. But I understand what you mean in terms of just what's the strategy when you're just mired in the millions of ranks and nothing really seems to be catching. It's like imagine yourself like climbing a free climbing. Free soloing, basically.
Like free solo. Yeah.
And there we are, free solo, and we don't really have a hold to jump to. We're just sort of like stranded in the middle of the cliff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you need someone to throw you a rope, really, right? It's like, I'm done free soloing. I give me the rope. I was
waiting for Erling Haaland to do that for 90 minutes, and that was a lonely time on the side of that mountain, let me tell you.
Yeah, so you finished, I think you actually had 2 fewer points, right? Did you finish on 41 for this game week?
Yeah, I finished on 41, and that's a bit of a disappointment considering I just played my wild card. And I suppose it's always the curse when you play the wild card. You go into the game week and you just look at your team and you just like, I love this team. I love it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, I was so in love with my team heading into this game week. And
what went right? Tell me, what went right and what went wrong?
Well, the reason I loved it is because I didn't have Salah, which of course allowed when you spend the Salah money around the rest of your team, it means you can buy someone you love in every position.
Yes.
And then if we all look back at what happened in game week 8, the one who really exploded was Mo Salah. Therefore, where did it all go wrong? So here's the way we have to discuss the Salah or no Salah wildcarders coming out of this weekend is, what did you get in return for not having Salah? So I think the players I definitely wouldn't have in my wildcard had I had Mo Salah, no Ollie Watkins for sure. Do you think I would have had Ollie Watkins? Because there's no way I'm dropping Julian Alvarez or Haaland, at least a few days ago. This is another conversation we can have later. But
the Haaland conversation. Yeah. No, probably not. I think
probably
it would have been harder. Probably.
Watkins. Yeah. Would I have Kieran Trippier? Would I have Kieran Trippier either?
I think you would have found a way to keep Kieran Trippier, but I think you probably wouldn't have had Odegaard. I mean, what did your midfield end up looking like going into this game week 8 then? How did it end up?
let me start with the bad news. I have Thomas Suchek second on my bench as my fifth midfielder. But my starting midfield is JWP, Odegaard, Son, and Madison. I feel like this is just like an incredible baseline. That heartbeat is just like pumping, and I still honestly feel kind of good about it. But just to get back to the Salah thing is I am looking at this through the lens of Trippier plus Watkins and that 11 points between the two of them versus the 15 points that Salah gets. And this is the game or the risk that we're all taking is, can the players that you got in place of Salah, can they not just match but beat Salah?
Mm-hmm.
Now
you could have had points from other. Yeah, you could have had points from other players.
Sure.
Did you start Paul Torres then? Was he in your squad?
No. Okay. So I didn't. Ultimately, I got rid of Saka and replaced Saka with JWP. This is going back to the conversation you and I were having Thursday night. Saka becomes Ward-Prowse, and I take that money to upgrade Pau Torres to Matty Cash, who had so many good opportunities to score points in that Wolves match. And Leno, I brought in Leno in place of Matt Turner, who I think I probably would have started Matt Turner over Areola this weekend. So I give up the Turner clean sheet for Leno's 2-pointer, and I give up Cash for Pau Torres. So it's complicated. I accept that. And there's but in the long run, is this team really going to earn out, or is Mo Salah just, this question again, is he essential? Like any player, is any player essential? So you're a Salah owner. You've been riding this roller coaster where you forewent Son so you could get Salah in. Yeah, that's been a rocky road.
I had Son for the Forest match, game week 5. Decided that I needed to have Salah, so I dropped Son for the brace in the Arsenal match and the goal in the Liverpool match. Brought him back for the Luton Town match, only to get another blank. So I have basically owned him for 4 weeks, and I missed on all 3 of the goals he scored across those 4 weeks. And that's just sort of that's just how it goes. That's fantasy. I think the thing that was frustrating about the Luton Town match obviously was you kind of knew early, right? It was one of those matches where Richarlison just had a real Richarlison-y match, right? Had 2 absolutely golden chances and just couldn't even, could barely put 2 feet, and one foot in front of the other. I mean, it was just, it was miserable performance from him, subbed at halftime, rightly so. And then Basuma gets this a very dumb red card, right? I mean, I should say yellow card accumulation, and on a basically it was not even like.
He wasn't even in the box.
Yeah.
You couldn't diving there.
You really couldn't argue with the dive. Sometimes you see a dive and you're like, well, that's a little harsh. There was some kind of contact, but this time there was nothing. It was like he had to call it, and it took some guts to do it because it was a red, but it was the right call.
Sure. Yeah. Inarguable. I just love how he's like he sees all 5 guys around him, and he's like, "There's the top of the D. This is my opportunity."
But there is like a kind of like sliding doors moment there too, because you can kind of, it's like if they're up 1 goal or 2 goals, if Richarlison had converted some of those chances, or if, Pedro Porro had scored on the ball that Son put him through on, he barely missed that shot. And it's like maybe he's not quite so desperate. But regardless, it just really changed the tenor of the match, right? I mean, ultimately Spurs were good enough to find a victory there, but obviously you would have expected them to score more than a goal in the Luton Town match, and they very likely would have in the second half after they made a couple of changes. But in the end, it didn't work out. I tried the Sun captaincy. I felt good about it because I just felt like I was making a sort of cold and rational decision, and I was not going to get caught up in the early don't captain the player in the first game, in the first game week of the weekend kind of thing. And but I have to say, when it didn't work out, it was it made it hard to watch the rest of the weekend. It was definitely, it weighed on me a little bit, but that was just the risk I had to take. And so it didn't work out, unfortunately. I did get the doggy clean sheet, Madison. assist. So it was okay. Like it just but then when Salah scored the brace day, you're like, like it was good to have him, but and his ownership was actually lower than I expected. Like for some reason in my head, I was like, oh, these goals are going to hurt me. But of course they helped. They were, his ownership is still, because he's so expensive, it's actually harder for many people to have him, obviously. It's kind of getting back to what you were saying before. So I think the thing that I was sort of frustrated about, though, was I just didn't do the kind of route one fantasy managing, which is to fix my weakest link, right? I started 2 Newcastle defenders away, and neither of them was Kieran Trippier, right? So I started Burn and Schär. Granted, they both had some chances for attacking returns in the match, especially Burn, but they didn't do anything. And they, and what I could have done was turn Estupiñán, who was injured, into Pedro Porro. If I'd done that, I almost definitely would have captained Salah, right? And so that's whatever that ends up being, like a 5-12, something like a 17-point swing. And, there's no point in really thinking about this stuff or dwelling on it too much, because that's just sort of how it goes. And it's not.
Oh, we're going to do Kings of the Game Week, Josh, and I'm going to look at these teams and say, I could have had all of those guys.
I could have had every single one of these. Exactly. So, but it was like, I could have just fixed my weakest link, right? I could have fixed my problem, which is I have an injured defender and I don't have a great defense this week. And I didn't need to burn 4. I could have just done that. And I think I maybe had a little bit of Son. I was just so convinced that Son was in this incredible form and that he was going to have this awesome match against Luton Town. And I really think if the dam had broken early, it could have been a real, route. I mean, Luton Town have been shipping goals to everybody, and but c'est la vie. So that's where we are. And I think it's been 4 weeks of pretty much kind of like the car's in neutral still. And I don't know. I'm going to try to. The thing I'm thinking about now, and you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started potting, is what are the people who are doing well doing? And I wonder if do
they know what it is? Is the question?
Do they know? Like, are they just reacting to trends better than we are? I think this season there's just been a lot of talk about preaching patience. There's people who still were starting Rashford and Bruno this week, right? I mean, after week after week after week of them just putting up extremely disappointing performances. And then it's always just like, well, look at the XG. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but in the XA, whatever, like, look at the expected goals and assists that they are creating, Brandon. But at some point if you're actually watching these matches, it is very clear that this is a team completely out of sync.
Look at the frowns upon their faces.
Look at the frowns upon their faces. And it's just not, this does not feel like a team that's gone. And I don't totally understand it. Right? Did they didn't like end last season on an especially sour note, did they? It's kind of weird that
they became a publicly traded company in 2012. They're not a club. So we only talk about football clubs.
There are Man United fans who listen. There are Man United fans who listen to this podcast, Brandon. So before I've got to spend Monday in Reddit apologizing for some stray comments. No, I mean I think Man United fans are more frustrated than anybody, right?
Yeah, they care and we don't. Yeah, so that's their cross to bear for sure.
Specifically, I felt like after last season, there was a feeling that there was maybe some momentum around the club, right? And so I'm a little surprised that they've started so flat to start this year. It's really, I mean, they made the Champions League, that they felt like they were on the up, and maybe they still will be. Again, we're only 8 weeks into the season, but the vibes are definitely off right now.
Yeah, I think it was after the World Cup, after the holiday last year, or early this year, where Rashford started scoring all those goals and they just started racking up wins and wins and wins. And they actually didn't finish the season very strongly at the end of the last Premier League season, Manchester United. And then over the summer, the transfer window was very odd. They have all sorts of allegations against various players at the club and contentious issues with the manager, coupled with the fact that the new signings, namely Onana, Onana has just been a disaster, unfortunately. And when De Gea first
really
signed
bad goal, the goal he conceded yesterday was a tough one to concede for sure.
Yeah, and if you watch the highlights from their match against Galatasaray in the Champions League, Onana was like just even worse. And you have to stand by him because you remember when De Gea first started at Manchester United, he was reviled and made some mistakes, and he ultimately, I think, had an incredible career there. So it's not to say that he's a terrible keeper, but it's just his defense, everything's kind of gone wrong. It's all
his defense
wrong.
Isn't helping him either. I mean, that goal was started by
Maguire.
It was even before Maguire, it was Casemiro. Started that.
Sure, Maguire passes it into Casemiro, who is surrounded by like 3 Brentford guys, and then Casemiro can't quite take control of the situation, and it all bleeds out from there for sure.
Yeah. One weird thing about that match too, just as a quick side note, is I have to say, I feel like the Rico Henry injury has kind of ruined Mbeumo from a fantasy point of view. And it's strange because they're not even really playing on the same side of the pitch, but just Aaron Hickey is such a downgrade from Rico Henry that there's absolutely no width anymore on that left side of the pitch. And it's just everything stalls over there. And when Aaron Hickey occasionally sends in a ball, he just balloons it into like past the touchline. And it seems to be happening again and again and again. And you're like, it makes their whole attack just kind of come to stall out.
I was cracking up at Hickey because the commentary. So Hickey was actually like coming in centrally for a number of Brentford attacks, and he would find himself open at the top of the box, and he would not balloon the cross. He'd balloon the shot over the goal. And the commentary was like, well, Manchester United better watch out for this because that's the second time Hickey's got to look at goal. And I'm like, this is not a problem that Manchester United has. No, it's like it's classic, fine. NBA sort of like, let him shoot. We're in a good situation if Hickey is shooting the ball.
Yeah, and Ben Mee being out too. That's obviously a huge problem as well. And so I think it's a tough time. And now Flecken is now just rotting on my bench, possibly until my next wild card. The Strakosha came in. I thought played pretty well. A little unlucky, maybe. Not to get a clean sheet in the end. Then I don't know why you put Flecken back out there. So yeah, credit to. Honestly, you have to give Brentford credit. Talk about that's like an XG type win, right? It's like that match is that's like an X win, Brandon. That should count as a win in my personal record book.
We were talking about that before we started recording. Like Manchester United lost that match, and again, as you say, we do have United supporters listening to this podcast, and all deference to you, but you all know you lost that match, and you just happened to have a Scottish legend on the bench.
All these Man United fans catching these stray bullets right now, Brandon. It's not fair.
It's gonna be one club or another one week. So I'm not here to make friends, Josh. I'm here to win.
That's right. Well, neither of us are doing any of that right now. So it's, but I think the thing is, as pointed out, as sort of shown in the Arsenal let's restart this here, Brandon. As indicated by the Arsenal Man City match, it is an interesting Premier League season. So I can handle the fantasy not going super well at the moment because I look at the top of the table. And you've got Spurs and Arsenal at the top of the table, which is just fun and different, right? I mean, they're tied with 20 points apiece. You got Man City in third with 18. Liverpool in fourth with 17. Brighton and Villa are just 1 point back of Liverpool, 2 points back from Man City. Even West Ham isn't that far. So 8 weeks in, we have what hopefully, again, it's like these races. These people are like, don't look at the table until January. It's why not? When you shouldn't look at the table is May. That's gonna be the least fun time to look at the table, most likely, right? Like look at it now when it's competitive and interesting.
Yeah. Right.
And so so I think it's. It's fun right now to see all these teams here, and I hope that it lasts as long as it can. And I think it was great for Arsenal to get that win over Man City. Man City's lost 2 in a row, which again, it's who knows. It's you sort of feel like it can end up being a little bit like Bayern last season, where Bayern basically gave the title away, and then Dortmund gave it right back.
Nobody wanted it.
Final match of the season. Yeah, and so, but this season it doesn't feel like that, right? It feels like Arsenal and Spurs are really, and Liverpool as well. I think that Liverpool, it's a shame from their perspective that they didn't win that match, because then you'd have 3 teams above Man City in the table going into the game week 8. Right?
I do wonder if the story of the table right now, though, is Rodri at Man City. And the reason why Man City have lost 2 matches in a row is because of Rodri's suspension. And this team cannot play. They cannot play without him, apparently. Erling Haaland, who I captained this week, and Haaland didn't have a great game. On top of the fact that this city team without Rodri cannot get the ball into any interesting positions in the attacking third, and they couldn't get him the ball. So I wonder if it's just we're just like a month away from Rodri being back in the team and City being comfortably at the top of the table again.
I think so, but it's still 6 points dropped, right? I mean,
sure.
So it could really make a huge. And it's very interesting too, because I feel like they have been trying to find more central midfielders too, right? It's like they brought in Phillips, and that obviously has not worked at all.
Yeah, Nunez from Wolves.
Exactly, Nunez, and I guess Nunez hasn't. I mean, he just really hasn't got that many minutes, right? I guess he got 20 minutes. And
Kovacic was absolutely horrible in this Arsenal match.
That was that's an interesting one. I mean, it's sort of he was playing a lot at the start of the season, and then I mean, obviously he's coming back in now because of the Rodri situation. So we may just not see him again for a while, Brandon.
Why would we? It just
maybe that might have been Kovacic's testimonial match for Man City.
I loved it. It was the battle of overrated former Chelsea midfielders. It was Jorginho versus Kovacic, and guess who won?
Jorginho could have won the Ballon d'Or a few years ago. Okay, he was
a legitimate award. We all know.
Well, but he was. He said, "I'm a Jorginho. You don't like Jorginho." Kovacic,
he's fine. If I were playing in the park, I would 100% pick Jorginho to be on my team. But you're not starting him ideally in your Premier League team at this moment in time.
It's an interesting run for Arsenal now. They have the Chelsea match in Game Week 9. We'll talk more about Game Week 9 on next week's pod, because, again, this is a international break. We got 2 weeks to go. But once Game Week 9 is over, they have a really strong run outside of one difficult match. They play Newcastle in 11. But other than that, it's Sheffield at home in 10, Burnley at home in 12, Brentford away, which I have to fancy their chances there, Wolves at home, and Luton away in games. So, basically, once you Chelsea away in Game Week 9 is sort of like, all right, you can hold your wick or whatever, but but I think that I have no Arsenal players at the moment, and I feel like that's going to be kind of a big priority for me over the next couple of weeks, is figuring out how to you can get their defenders for cheap, right? I mean, you can get Zinchenko for like $3 million, right? It's like, you get into that defense at a cut rate. So I think that's starting the Game Week 10. That's definitely where I'm going to be looking with my transfers.
Yeah, and Saka's fitness is very interesting. I went Odegaard on my wild card, kind of just in true wild card fashion. It's like a kind of a luxury pick there, and now it's like, do I jettison him immediately to get Saka in? And I don't think so either. I thought Odegaard, as his career continues to develop at Arsenal, he's just like a real attacking asset in fantasy now, fully. And now you never know when he's going to take a penalty either.
I think you could probably Game Week 9 or Game Week 10 is when Spurs fixtures start to tilt a little bit. Actually, they're not terrible, but they tilt a little bit worse. And you might be able to move Madison or Son to Saka. It kind of depends on how much money you have available. So
I have 0.5 in the bank, which is my degree of flexibility. And honestly, just flashing forward to our podcast next week, I'm thinking I may just roll my transfer going into Game Week 9, classic. Limp out of a wild card game week and say, trust the process. I've got these players for a reason, and I do like my team, fair enough, even though I'm looking at playing a 4-3-3 in game week 9, so I can start double Newcastle defense.
Yeah, I've got 3-5-2, so kind of similar right now, and I'm also planning to roll my transfer. God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Tune in next week for an exciting. What will surely be an exciting podcast.
Yeah, exactly. This is one long preview for next week's episode. But and we'll see what kind of injuries come through in the international break. There's always a handful, but the Saka stuff was, and this will kind of maybe end here, but the Saka stuff, and the first part of the pod here, was interesting because I thought we were going to see the classic. I would have told you, based on the comments from Arteta Friday morning, that it was like a 95% certainty that Saka would be starting on Sunday. Just the classic, hasn't trained, has a chance, right?
Is that Saka's music I hear?
Yeah, exactly. Has a chance. And Saturday, some, what turned out to be liars were basically like, Saka will be starting on Sunday. And I guess people just feel like, hey, why don't I just throw out anything? And if it turns out to be right, I can pretend that I'm like an in the know person or whatever. But I think it's or maybe he was actually supposed to play. I have no idea. But it came out after that match. It came out that he had not trained one single time. So I think I honestly think that Arteta saying that he was in contention was him basically trying to make sure that Pep allocated some of his time, right, in preparation to preparing for the possibility of Saka playing. And I think
it worked.
I suppose
turned out it worked.
Work in the press.
You're making me think of the since canceled Al Franken, former SNL writer, Minnesota senator, and his famous book, Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell Them. Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell Them. Yeah, that's the name of the book. Yeah. And that's all about Premier League managers, basically. It's just lies and the lying liars who tell them.
There's no obligation to ever tell the truth, right? There's no like this. It's not like in American sports where there's like you have to release your injured list, right? You can just say anything you want. And I'm actually surprised they ever tell the truth. Like if you were a manager and there was no punishment for ever misleading people, why wouldn't you just mislead people all the time? Like, what is the benefit of ever being honest?
Why wouldn't you just send Roy Kent to do every press conference?
Exactly. Grumpy old Roy Kent, Brandon, with this dodgy knee. Make sure you have a second chair for him to put up the other foot. All right. Anyway, let's take a break. Oh, I wanted to just quickly say thank you to everyone who supports the podcast on Patreon. We did a Patreon video pod, or I should say, I guess it was a YouTube live show on Thursday evening, and once my blood stopped boiling because we were we had so many technical difficulties getting the thing rolling. It was, which eventually I feel like we're going to fix this eventually. Yes. It was really fun. We got into a groove and it was really great just having real time feedback from people. Really enjoyed it. I think that we're trying to do more of this kind of stuff. So, but thanks to all the Patreon supporters who gave us questions during the show or beforehand. It's actually just up on YouTube now. So if you want to take a look and kind of see what it's like to support the podcast and do some Patreon chats, you can go take a look there. It's on our Patreon, or that's on our YouTube page, I should say, youtube.com/alwayscheating, something like that.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, no one would ever actually use the URL anyway, right?
Just Google
go to YouTube and put those words. Yeah, just put those words in. Yeah, Google and YouTube. They're all owned by the same people. But we do an extra podcast each week. You can talk with us and with others on the Discord. Discord's been really active all season, very active, I will say. And moving over there from Slack was a real step forward for us for sure. And thank you to Erland Kjarsrod for supporting the podcast, Brandon. It's always nice to get new Patreon supporters. If you want to, especially if, maybe you're having an unexpectedly great season and you're just really enjoying yourself and you want to find more like-minded people amongst the grumps, Brandon, there's, I don't know. We weeded out a lot of them. We moved over from the Slack, but they didn't all come over,
Well, so, I'll tell you what, Josh, if you're having a great season, I want you to come over to the Discord and become a supporter so I can pump you for information, because I need to know what you're doing
that's true. We need your help. You be paying us to give us your advice. Yeah, exactly. But you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. Brandon, let's take a quick break, and then we'll do Kings of the Game Week.
There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform that you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because Indeed does the hard work for you. They show you the candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post so you can hire faster. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports, and support the show by saying that you heard it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners, subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply. This episode is brought to you by Paycor. Paycor empowers leaders to build winning teams. With Paycor, leaders can recruit, onboard and train employees, set goals, and drive performance. If you're a leader, everyone depends on you. Who do leaders depend on? Paycor. Learn more at paycor.com/leaders.
This Halloween,
mystery lurks around every corner.
Bundle up with Disney Plus and Hulu.
What are you scared of?
The dark.
It's spine-tingling fun on Disney Plus with Haunted Mansion and Goosebumps.
I'm gonna need you to spread the word.
Then feel the bone-chilling terror on Hulu with The Boogeyman and American Horror Story Delicate.
Something's happening to me.
The Disney Bundle with Hulu and Disney Plus. All of these and more streaming this month. Plans starting at $9.99 a month. 18 plus only. Access content from each service separately. Offer valid for eligible subscribers only. Terms apply.
All right, Brandon, we're back. Kings of the Game Week. Once again, this is Game Week 1 through 8. If you were able to see into the future, Brandon, if you had what they call hockey in the world of One Piece, for example, Brandon, you could put together. I'm going to start peppering this podcast with little One Piece references. Brandon, I have put in the reps. I've been watching hundreds of One Piece episodes. I need that time and effort to go into something. So it's going to spill over like an overstuffed couch into this podcast. Yeah, it's good. It's good times. So just call me Monkey D. Landon. Okay, that's a little joke for all the One Piecers out there. All right. So Game Week 1 is here. Game Week 1, Kings of the Game Week. Best team you could have put together, Brandon. As we all remember, the absolute star of Game Week 1
this
was
team is
Raphael.
A mess. Look at this. What is this?
This team is chaos. It shows you why so many people who take this game very seriously are 3 million overall. When you look at how we started this season, there's not a single like good play. I guess you have Holland. All right, so you have Raphael Varane was the number 1 overall top points getter, a player who never scores goals, by the way. And he scored a goal assisted by Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a player who never gets attack in return. So that's how things started out. And that was also a game where they should not have kept a clean sheet, right? Because it was the Onana shoves. Yeah, the Wolves match. It was Onana shoved. I can't remember who in the box, and doesn't.
Yeah, and PGMOL came out and apologized. It was the first apology of the season.
First of many apologies.
Whoopsies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have those two. They were in the best team. Bernd Leno was there, and Bernd Leno has turned out to be one of the real bright spots for Fulham, and that was one of the reasons that wildcarding really early can be a mistake sometimes. And I did wildcard very early. I wildcarded after game week 4. I got a little aggressive. Didn't really work out, unfortunately, but maybe it did. I mean, who knows? Maybe I would be 5 million overall right now, if I had done that. But it's sometimes you don't quite know what to believe and what you don't, right? Because after game week 4, we had that was the match where Paulinho didn't play for Fulham, and they got annihilated by Man City. And it was just
Man City followed a Brentford annihilation.
Yeah. And so it was really hard to have a player like Leno in your team after those first couple of weeks. But we've kind of seen he's kind of that dream keeper where he gets the with keepers like this, you're going to get a lot of 1-pointers too, right? 1 and 2-pointers. But it's like if they can keep a clean sheet, then it's going to be paired with a bunch of saves and often multiple bonus points. And that's what we saw in game week 1. I think he's probably going to pop up at least 1 or 2 more times in this, these Kings of the Game Week. So you got Leno. Disasi is there with 11 points, Brandon, your boy Disasi.
I love my Chelsea defense. It's worked out so well for me this season. Yeah, it worked out incredible
for all of us. Yeah. And then Anderson, who has been but again, this is your back line is Varane, Wan-Bissaka, Disasi, Anderson. Okay. Then you have Leno in goal. And then the midfield is Rodri with 13 points. This is when we thought he might be the next Gundogan. I don't know. Like he actually has. I mean, he has had a pretty good attacking season.
I do want to jump back to the defense though and give Anderson some credit. He has 4 fewer points than Erling Haaland this season. 4 fewer points than Erling Haaland.
That is ridiculous. I mean, yeah, that would have been another move that you could have just brought in a keeper brought a defender from Palace this game week. That would have been a totally reasonable.
That would have been a cool move for sure. I totally agree with you. I'm
surprised Fulham let him go. I felt like he was pretty good that one season in Fulham, and I'm surprised they didn't try to sign him.
He was. I am surprised too. He was there on loan that season, and I think that season was a little mired in the Scott Parker sort of drama some not the best moment for the club. So I wish Anderson well.
Yeah, that's true. It may be that he had an opportunity to jump to a club in the Premier League,
make more money.
So then the midfield, you got Rodrigo, Harvey Barnes, who's now out, I think until January or something like that. He gone, and then Saka, who again has low key been just an amazing fantasy asset this season. Obviously, didn't play in game week 8, but otherwise has been terrific. Up front, we have Isak, who has a brace this game week as well. He had brace. The problem. I'm like stuttering. I'm so nervous when I talk about these Newcastle forwards, Brandon. But the problem with Isak and Wilson is that they're both too good, and it makes it so hard to know which one to have. I mean, it's like you almost want one of them to just have an extended spell on the sidelines. I wouldn't wish injury upon anyone, but
they would like go on a vision quest. Like I'm going to Thailand for 6 months just to find myself.
Exactly. Like when Wayne goes in Wayne's World 2, right? Meets Jim Morrison in the desert, that sort of thing, right? So, and then of course you have Haaland, and at the time, this was the first match of game week 1, if you can remember that far back, and it was the kickoff match. They played Burnley. It was a pretty I feel like that match was over at halftime. It was it's actually kind of how I felt today, yesterday when they had the Palace Forest game on in the kind of marquee Saturday window. Then it was nilled, and I was like, well, yeah, like, what'd you expect? Like, it's like why is that? I mean, I guess everybody gets a shot, right? But why didn't you wait till Palace played somebody it was just like a weird match to have on in the marquee Saturday window. Like that match had 0-0 written all over it before the season started, let alone, a few handful of game weeks in. So,
God, I didn't really know what I was rooting there when you don't have any fantasy assets for either team, and it's like a 0-0 all the way.
John Stone clean sheet lost, I guess.
You're just like, I want Anthony Alenga to score goals and own goals and just be involved in everything. I want chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, chaos is usually the answer. Lots of goals and chaos. So then we had Aaron Wissa, who picked up a goal and 3 bonus points, and he is just classic. The more you see him, the more you realize why he's the backup forward option. Talented player, does some things well, doesn't do everything well. you can see why his game would really click in 30 minutes and why having him play week in and week out is not quite because he's really pressing. Yeah. I thought you saw it in the Man United match where he was like, well, I know I need to be scoring more, I need to be shooting more. And so it was just a lot of wild shots from outside the box that landed in row H.
It's true. And speaking of the pressing, is that he's moving too much and ineffectively. Yeah. I like the idea though of Vissa being like the 8-minute abs. Like Tony is 8 minute. Ivan Toney is 8-minute abs, and somebody's like, well, what about 7-minute abs with Vissa? Vissa can do what Tony can do in 30 minutes. Like, no, not possible.
No, it worked for a couple weeks, didn't it? And then and maybe if they hadn't gotten so injured, you want instant results, don't you? Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to game week 2. We've got Brian and Bomo. This was when he got the, in hindsight, kind of fluky brace. It was, I think he had a late pen, and I think he scored in like the 93rd minute of that match.
Yeah.
And
this is that Fulham match I was mentioning earlier. Yeah, and it was just the Fulham team just disintegrated, sadly.
So he was the player of the week with 16 points overall. Again, kind of not a ton of familiar faces in this game week 2 squad. You've got Aurier, who was I think only temporarily. I don't know if he still is, but he was kind of playing out of position as like a right winger, right? Yeah. And Lucas Dean, who has had some nice moments this season, is Stupinan with 11, Matoma with. You had three Brighton players: Stupinan, March, and Matoma. That was the Wolves match where they Matoma scored that brilliant goal, if you recall. And Wolves have really acquitted themselves well after that rough start, right? Beating Man City and also in keeping Villa, who are in great form, to a draw as well. It's a nice little 2-match run for them.
And I love Gary O'Neill, and I love how I feel like he was unjustly told to leave Bournemouth,
sacked,
because he was doing good things at Bournemouth last season, and now Bournemouth are in the mud,
struggling.
Yeah. Yep. And Wolves. I agree, are doing really well.
So we got Wissa again. In our again, great start for him. Congrats to him, right? The goals and those early wins count just as much as they would if they came in game week 38.
The Wikipedia keeps getting updated.
Exactly, and so those points are still going to help Brentford no matter when they happen. Even if he did fall off a little bit, you got a lot of players who pop up on these team of the game weeks. I feel like Leon Bailey once a year is going to pop up on these. He's going to have one match where everything clicks and then 9 consecutive blanks. Jota's kind of the same way.
And then find himself, Josh, say on Sunday, October 8th, fighting with John McGinn over who should be taking the corner kick. And I'm just like, you ever you know those moments during the game week where you're like, I think I could punch my fist all the way through my TV right now. I think I could do it.
Yeah, the Bailey thing. There was so much excitement around him when he first joined too, and it's whatever. He was a king of the game week once, Brennan. Maybe he will be.
Once
maybe
a king, always
again.
A king, Josh. Yeah.
Once a king, always a king. Exactly. Once again, I'm struck by how similar the West Ham and Aston Villa kits look when shrunk down to this small screenshot size here. Yeah, a little too similar, right? I don't know how that happened.
You've got to know your sponsor on the FPL site. Are you a BK8 guy or are you a Betway guy?
That's true. And I think on TV you can see the difference in the kits, but they're just, it's a little Claret. I mean, Claret is just a color you don't really have in American sports either. There's really I can't think of any prominent. The Washington
like USC, the USC Trojans, maybe.
A little bit, but that's more
They're
red.
A little more
really.
red.
It's a little more red. You just don't really get this kind of it's like a almost purplish red.
Yeah,
right?
We can't make the dye. That's the problem. We lack the resources.
The dye can only be only the Thames can make the dye used for. It's too expensive to import.
Definitely. They're getting it from anyway. I'm gonna make some horrible.
But there's But interestingly, the squad has no Arsenal players. It has no Man City players. Who else is missing? I guess you have one Spur and Vicario. Again, another defender who's been terrific so far this season. I'm really, really impressed with him. I think maybe the best goalkeeper I just feel like he's been so good this season. Really terrific.
It's like Spurs. Jose Sa's first season for Wolves. If you cast your mind back of just like, hey, here's an electric goalkeeper who knows how to make saves and basically knows be a commanding presence, has authority.
Yeah, it's like, great. You can just have this guy for 10 years, right? And just like sure, he's going to make mistakes like everybody does, but it's like, it just seems solid and good. Yeah. I agree. I mean, Martinez, Bill is kind of the same way. All right. Well, that's your game week 2 squad. Game week 3, there's your boy, Brandon Jose Sa right there.
Speak of the devil, and there he appears.
Speak of the devil. Then we've got, this was, this is the Spurs Luton match was in game week 3. So we have Malo Gusto, the
Chelsea played Luton.
Oh, did I say Spurs? I meant Chelsea. Chelsea Luton. Yeah. Chelsea Luton, of course. Yeah. So you have Malo Gusto, the 4 million man, gets 2 assists in this match, 14 points. Raheem Sterling explodes, and I think he was the player of the week in game week 8 as well. So we'll talk more about him later. But he's kind of like wrapped a bunch of whatever performances around these 2 incredible matches, but in the end, it's if you can have him for the big ones, then I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say that I would think of Sterling as a set and forget kind of player, though. It's he's just a little too frustrating, and I don't know. I mean, he was benched last week, right? It's like you've got hard to trust him completely.
You've got spoiler alert: 16 points in game week 8, 19 points in game week 3. Apart from that, it's 2-2, 2-2-2, and 0. So that's a really hard one to wrap your mind around as a fantasy manager.
Yeah, if you're wondering why the season's been a little bit of a struggle, just look at those Sterling numbers. Udogie pops up for the first time. He had 12 points. Anderson again with 11. Matty Cash with 17. I know I'm just saying the person's name with their number right now, but it's interesting the way when you start to look at the best teams, how certain players start to pop up again and again and again. We're seeing more Spurs defenders, right? We're seeing Crystal Palace defenders. Aston Villa in different versions keep showing up again and again, right? Last week or the game week before, you had Bailey and Dean. This week you've got Cash and Diaby. And so, and then we haven't even gotten to Watkins yet. It'll come a few weeks later. And so, that's like 5 or 6 different players who all show up in the best team of a particular game week. And I think when that starts to happen, that's a sign that the team is probably doing really well, right? And there's probably, and the better you are, not always, but frequently, the better you are, the more fantasy assets you're going to have in your squad.
Yeah, and then to that point, the allure of Chelsea, and this is why everyone was still debating Chelsea after game week 3 is, okay, it wasn't Chilwell, it wasn't Reece James, it wasn't Nicholas Jackson, but you've got Gusto, you've got Sterling. Maybe we just need to invest in different Chelsea assets. Then you look for who totally falls off, but there's that man again, Joachim Anderson, 11 points.
Yeah, 11 pointer. Yeah, Paulinho popped in there with a 10-pointer.
Yeah, I remember that goal against Arsenal where it was a last second, like Arsenal thought they would get away with a 2-1 victory. Terrible. And set piece, and Paulinho just did the business.
Oh yeah, I think we might have watched that one together. Did we watch that at the was that the one that we watched at the
Smithfield Hall, maybe?
At Smithfield Hall, I think it may have been. Okay. But that's that was a really tough 2 points loss there. Jared Bowen, we should talk about him too. You and I have probably been a little I don't know. It feels like he has not gotten a lot of play on the podcast so far this season. He's low-key had an excellent year.
He hasn't.
You thought he cost we did that video pod. You thought he cost like 9.5.
I was like, no way. He's too expensive. I was thinking of last season. He was 8 million plus at some point, and he and West Ham were struggling a bit. Now West Ham have had a really strong start to the season, and the debate for me on wildcard was, Bowen is the goal scorer, and he's in good form. But there's James Ward-Prowse, who gives you just a little extra flexibility in your fantasy squad. So I've ultimately gone James Ward-Prowse, but by doing so, like I was paying special attention to West Ham in today's match against Newcastle, and still they impress. I think that they remain a really good squad through the first 8 game weeks of the season. So I think they're going to continue to pop up in these Kings of the Game weeks for the rest of the season.
I think so too, and I think even without Rice, it does feel like they got Ward-Prowse added a little dynamism to that squad. Interestingly, of course, they neither of them got an attacking return in this match, and Thomas Souček did at 4.9. He is really delivering. By the way, 2 goals and 1 assist. The clear cheapy fifth midfielder if you're looking for one, because he's just he's that kind of. He's a central midfielder with attacking instincts. And I actually wonder without Rice there if he's maybe taking on a little more of that too.
Maybe the way the goal was scored this Sunday by Souček was a counterattack, capitalizing on a mistake. And Souček, as you say, was just like immediately crashing the box for an easy goal. Yeah. So it's true. Like he's got those instincts.
Bruno is here in the Game Week 3 squad. Nobody knows what to think about him. To give him a little bit of credit, he is getting moved all over the pitch right now. It is. You look at someone like Saka. Saka just plays on the right wing and just owns that space and interchanges with a number of different players, right? Whether it's Ben White over there or even. Well, obviously, I mean, he and Odegaard too have a great understanding now, but Bruno is just he has to play 4 different positions at times this season, and I think that's really that has really hurt him. Although honestly, he also probably needs to be doing a little more, right? It feels like if he was scoring a little more, for example, then maybe they would be doing better.
Does he have to do more, or I think you're hitting upon it there. Less? I think he has to do less, and I think him as the captain out there, he feels compelled and. He feels compelled to lead. No one's running for this team, for one. Like, that's a huge problem for Manchester United, which means Bruno, because he is at his heart a try-hard, is doing a lot of running, which gets him in trouble. And I don't know.
The try-hard thing is why I always like him, because you can't fault his whatever, the fire, right? It's just it's hard to ever really get mad at a player who plays with the kind of fire that he plays with. But I think the fact that Sancho hasn't worked out, the fact that Antony has been a little bit of a bust so far, I think, and then obviously losing or whatever the Mason Greenwood situation is. So that's your runners, right? There's 3 of them right there, and losing all 3 of those has I think really affected them as it would any squad, I suppose. So anyway, let's move on from that bummer of a Bruno conversation, Brandon. Let's drop ourselves right into Game Week 4. Immediately, I like what I see here. I'm seeing a lot of different colors.
Do you?
A lot of different. Well, a lot of different kit. No, I mean none of this was good. None of this was good for me. But I mean, I'm seeing lots of different kit colors here. It's good for my visually. I like seeing it. So we've got Haaland and Alvarez. This was the Alvarez match where we all realized we just had to suck it up and have him in our squads. Alvarez with 14 points, Haaland with 20 points. The Ferguson, who grabbed 17 points. And I mean, it's you kind of like keep, I don't know. He started off a little expensive this season. If he was 5.5, it'd be a little more fun to give Ferguson a shot, right? At 6 million, you're just like can't quite trust him because he's kind of like the Raheem Sterling of forwards, right? He's scored 4 goals on the season, but he scored 1 in Game Week 1, and then it's a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer, a 17-pointer, and then 4 consecutive 1-pointers from in Game Weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you obviously can't have him right now in fantasy, but you can kind of see into the future. You could see a world where he because the thing is, Brighton have had a terrible run of fixtures, right? It isn't. I mean, it's just been basically going back to Game Week 4. Newcastle, away to Man United, Bournemouth is a good one, I suppose, and they did win that one 3-1. But then away to Villa, home to Liverpool. These are all pretty tricky matches, and it continues in Game Week 9. Unfortunately, they play away to Man City, but then after that, it really gets quite nice, and that lasts basically until early December. So I'm hoping that because I like everybody, I like Brighton, I like watching them play, and I'm sort of ready for them to turn a corner. So
they're an interesting club to follow, of course, under De Zerbi, and every match is so dramatically interesting. It's like they fly high. And the match. What did you make about their performance against Liverpool? Because it looked at first like, all right, we had written Brighton off after getting their butts kicked last week, and now they score an early goal against Liverpool. Of course they do. De Zerbi's back, and then it looks like Liverpool are just gonna. It's just very competitive always with Brighton, no matter who they're playing.
Yeah, I was surprised they equalized. I was impressed. Like I don't know.
They honestly should have won with
really
a Pedro open goal that he blew.
Yeah, he's been much more involved. I mean, obviously, like after the preseason, he was on everyone's minds a little bit because he was doing really well. But during his time at Watford, it wasn't like I was like on the João Pedro bandwagon at all. But this includes the Europa League too. It's like he's just very involved, like in all of these matches, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. And again, he's a little bit like Evan Ferguson. You can't actually own him in fantasy, and it feels like things are like a little unsettled right now. I suppose it's really just. It's a stupid number. Then you also have the Steele Verbruggen situation, right? It's like just alternating keepers like all the time. It feels very chaotic to me. And I don't know. And Cisa being out, I'm not sure how big of a deal that is. Stupid out is a big deal. I think that really hurts them. Let's see how long he's out for. It's we'll see. I guess they're saying November 4th is what the game is currently saying. So that would be, I think, something like game week 11. So then that'll be an interesting question, Brandon, because if that turns out to be true, then because I have a stupid on my bench right now, right? I didn't transfer him out. Keep on the bench for game week 9. If I hold until 11, then I'd have him for Everton, Sheffield United, and Forest in the next 3 matches, which sounds good.
Well,
that sounds
it does sound good. I mean, you've got double Newcastle defense in you, doggy. I don't understand why you'd have to get rid of Estupinan in that situation.
No, and I'm not planning to. The problem is I have Van Hack too, who I thought would be more of a starter than he has been. And so I basically have 2 non-playing defenders at the moment. So it's a little risky just in case somebody gets injured or gets rotated or whatever. All right, let's move on to. Oh, wait, are we done with game week 4 here, Brandon? Anything else you want to say?
Game week 4 is it does strike me as chaotic, especially in the midfield with Gilmore from Brighton, Declan Rice with the game winner against Manchester United, and then Solomon from Spurs. Yes. Right there, just 3 guys who are just like toxic for your fantasy sides. No one would ever recommend getting them in for all different reasons. And
speaking of toxic, wild. Kurt Zuma's in this squad too.
He's actually toxic. He's actually toxic.
We got Zuma there. Yeah, Willie Bully. It's a tricky. It's a tricky one. And then Trent gets 12, but then he immediately, if you remember, on game week 4, he gets injured and
the biggest trap in this.
Yeah,
the biggest trap in the whole game week 4 Kings of the Game Week is Erling Haaland, as we know. Don't even touch that guy with the 10-foot pole.
It's a weird one right now with him. I'm you know what? I'm going down with the ship with Haaland. It's like Twitter. I'm just staying there until it all falls apart. I don't know when that's going to happen. Sooner than later, perhaps. But
it's funny. What's funny is how quickly Haaland has gone from changing the Salah game. So Salah, it was like a years-long process of this guy is just an incredible fantasy asset. Why would we ever not have him too? Every game week, Salah was just the third rail. Yeah, Haaland is already in that third rail status like Salah was, and we are all still living through the Salah fantasy experiment. Well, we're still all like week to week being like, is he going to kill my game week or not? So I don't see that ever changing with Haaland so long as he's at City. So like, this is just our life, and I'm with you. I'm not there to sell him. And certainly I do think that there is something to the idea that Rodri has just not been in the midfield, and that's a huge problem for City's attacking output. So anyway, I'm sweating when I think about Haaland. I'm not here to say it's fine, don't worry about it, but I'm diamond hands with Haaland.
When you look at, to get back to a theme from earlier, Brandon, and I agree with you on Haaland, but when you look back to a theme that we talked about earlier, which is being kind of an unpredictable season. It's Solomon, Rice, Gilmore, Zuma, Boley. we have done Kings of the Game Week for at least 3 years now, 3 seasons of fantasy, and it is not normally like this, right? I feel like if you look back, there's always a couple of outliers, but the number that we're seeing right now, I think, is a little higher than usual, and so I think that is something to take heart, maybe, if you're not having the best season.
I think that's a good segue to Game Week 5, where just look at the outlay in Game Week 5. You've got Neto is the Bournemouth goalkeeper. Ream and Castagna, 2 Fulham defenders in the Kings of the Game Week.
Yeah.
Bernardo from City, Trossard, Hudson-Odoi, Hamer from Sheffield United, and Douglas Luiz. This is, you talked about the odd formations that Kings of the Game Week can give you at the top of the pod. And this is exactly it. It's a 4-5-1. Julian Alvarez is the lone striker. But again, I need to repeat and underline this midfield. Bernardo Silva, Trossard, Hudson-Odoi, Hamer, and Douglas Luiz. You're not doing fantasy wrong. Fantasy is doing fantasy wrong this season.
Yeah. I have Hudson-Odoi in my starting lineup, my bus team for Game Week 9, by the way. They play Luton home. Give me that Cho return, that Callum Hudson-Odoi return. Yes. I think he's got another one in him. If it's ever going to happen, it's Game Week 9 at home to Luton. So let's see what happens there. Yeah, I think it's I'm trying to think, what are the takeaways here? I mean, I guess Botman pops up, and this was kind of the start, really, of the great Newcastle defender run. Trippier got a clean sheet in this match as well, and
2 assists.
And 2 assists. I don't know why he's not in this King of the Game.
That's a good. Wait, no, this is not the Sheffield United match. This is just Botman getting cheeky 3 bonus points on a clean sheet.
I think we weren't sure if he was injured or not. He came back. He turns out he was injured. He's injured now again. But yeah. And then I think Alvarez again. We can touch him on Alvarez briefly though, because this is now, I think, I guess it's just the second time that he's popped up on here, but again, just a low key. Man City as a whole have struggled a little bit recently, but Alvarez, even last week, right, gets 8 points, scores a really nice free kick goal, gets 9 points in Game Week 5. Was in the Game Week 4 best team as well with 14 points. Just he really did emerge as the go-to affordable Man City asset. I still don't see him as the captainable one if you're going to captain a Man City player, because Haaland just plays more minutes and is ultimately more central. And it just doesn't feel like this kind of moment where he can't. Is it that he's not creating space? It almost doesn't feel like that. It just feels like he's not converting. I don't know. Like it doesn't feel like Haaland is just not seeing the ball. But I don't know. It's just not converting.
I think it's a combination of both. I don't think he's getting enough chances from his team. I don't think they're creating enough for him. And the moments where he does get those opportunities this season, most of the time he's just failing. And like today against Arsenal, he got the ball in a good position and he just slipped. It's a lot of that, a lot of sort of unfortunate, sort of like cursed like moments for Haaland. And it's like it doesn't really point to me to Haaland just being a different player or being in bad form. Well, I guess it is bad form. That's what it points to, Josh. He's in bad form.
It points to form is got to be part of the. Yeah. Well, I don't know. It feels like it's not going to last, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Pep's a great manager. He's going to figure something out. Rodri will be back. That may just, like you said, crack the whole top of the table open once again, or not, or uncrack it. It's cracked right now, right? Well, it just
release the Kraken.
Release the Kraken. Yeah, let's release the Kraken. All right, so here we go. We're on to Game Week 6. Carlton Morris popped on the team. Brent, I had Morris for this one. That was a good feeling. We had Saka with 13, Bruno Gamar's son, Trippier. This is kind of a throwback, Brent. I know the names of these players. We've got Matoma, Son, Saka, Morris, Trippier. Who else?
Leno.
Who else we got? Leno. Yeah, Leno. Welcome back, Leno.
I'm doing Leonardo DiCaprio on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, pointing at Leno. I know that guy from previous Kings of the Game Week.
Yeah, exactly. Johnny Evans, of course, naturally. Johnny Evans with 12 points this week.
Predictable.
Predictable. And then Sven. But this was the Sheffield United match. This one hurt. This is the one where I talked in the pod about how I was. Actually, this is the first illegal team I think we've seen, Brendan. There are four players from Newcastle in this best possible team. That feels like cheating. You should be able to put together four. But yeah, you have Trippier, Byrne, and Botman were the top three, and I had Schär for this one. So that was rarely has a clean sheet ever felt so hollow, Brandon. Then when you have Byrne, Botman, and Trippier all doing so well, and but still, it's that defense has really come alive. Obviously, I mean they did concede 2 goals in the West Ham match. It's definitely like a second season kind of thing with them. Like you feel like they're going to right the ship and ultimately most likely get a Champions League spot, but it's I feel like that first, you see this all the time, right? That first year when you're in Europe, and they didn't even did they play in the Europa League last year? I feel like they went right. It was like they went right from 0 to 60, right? Just like
Newcastle.
Newcastle. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. They did go 0 to 60 by way of the private investment fund, which is incredible how that works. But
sure. Yeah. But I know. I mean, obviously we can get into that. I don't want to get into it right now at all, but they have bought well. I mean, you look at Dan Byrne, and
they bought
the bot man. But some of these guys weren't it wasn't like they went out there and just bought Galacticos or whatever, right?
Sure.
I mean, maybe Bruno Guimaraes should be maybe the one, but otherwise it's like they just bought pretty smartly so far.
Do not disagree. You've got to really love the squad building that's happening in Newcastle. I agree, and that's what makes them super fun to watch right now.
Yeah,
and
I think so too.
The Game Week 6 squad, here's my takeaway. Every guy in this pitch, except for Carlton, Morris, and Luton, has double digits. All 10 out of 11 guys in this squad have double-digit scores. And that I think that we've kind of been dancing around this, looking at these weekly scores, is how explosive game week to game week has been. And I feel like that's the difference for this season. This season, it feels like the knife's edge. It's not like there's one knife edge that it's balanced on, whether or not you captain Salah versus Haaland. Now it's a knife edge of whether or not you own Matoma. It's a knife edge of whether or not you have a Newcastle defender. And that is just making this season that much more. You could call it fun. You could call it interesting. You could call it chaotic. It's just really, really difficult to predict, not just the variance, but there's just a big spectrum of variance, I think, that we're trying to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I don't know if that's because there's never been more talent in the Premier League, or I don't. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the fact that Villa are so good right now. You just have fewer bad teams. I wonder if that's part of it, right? It's you have a couple really bad teams, and then you've got, but then you've got 9 or 10 teams that are really quite good, right? Like that, you put Aston Villa in the Bundesliga this year or something like that. I wonder. I mean, obviously it's not apples to apples, but you wonder just. That feels like a best
MLS
League
team finish in the Premier League.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a dangerous game, but I do think that it's going to be pretty. There are going to be teams that miss out on the Champions League this year that are extremely good, and I think that's so that probably does contribute to what you're talking about a little bit. All right, let's move on to game week 7. This is a whole 2 weeks ago. Let's see who we've got here. Brandon Johnstone again. What another great pickup he would have been for wildcarders, Brandon, like myself. Johnstone with 9 points. The player of the week, of course, was Ollie Watkins with 23 points. Probably the biggest stinger for you so far this season was you dropped Watkins.
Yes,
for Morris. Thankfully, Morris does actually crack the kings of the game week for game week 7 with 10. So it could have been worse, right? If that had been 22.
I replaced the king with the king, and that's a good thing to
maybe as a
think
rook.
about.
a rook or a bishop.
Yeah. Morris is a bishop all the way.
Yeah.
But Watkins' 23-pointer, I only see one other 20-plus pointer in the Kings of the Game Week, and that's Holland in Game Week 4. So that's just like the scale of what Watkins did in Game Week 7. This is the biggest points haul of the season so far for Ollie. And watching Ollie against Wolves today, I thought not great.
Another attacking return, though. I mean,
yes. Yeah. So it's I don't want to dismiss the attacking returns, and he's just been so incredibly consistent. I think it's just one blank on the season so far, which is incredible. But that Wolves, it was a testament to the Wolves team where they really bullied Aston Villa and were muscling them and first to every ball, and Villa were struggling. Villa are a home team. And I am looking ahead to Game Week 9, and they are home hosting West Ham. That's going to be the Claret Derby, Josh. Good luck telling those two teams apart.
I hope they both wear their home kits for that one. Really challenge everybody. Like, if you're like if you're any kind of color blindness, I feel like that's going to be a tough match. Yeah, it's a really nice run for them because they play West Ham and Luton in back-to-back matches in 9 and 10. So, and then Forest in 11. Jeepers creepers, Brendan. How am I going to get a Villa player into my squad? I guess I just got to use a transfer.
Diaby is that guy.
I guess I could just use a transfer. That'd be the way to do it. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, what I might end up doing is I'm curious if I could do this right now. I'm not going to do it this week, but if I could, let's see. If I turn Mbomo into what's like the cheapest possible midfielder I can get.
Souček, who we were talking about earlier.
I'm going even cheaper, Brandon. I'm going way down the bottom. Let's say I'm going to bring in Marvelous Nkamba. Okay, just out of curiosity here. And that would mean I could bring in Ollie Watkins, just barely. Okay, so I can do it. It can be done, Brandon.
He's coming in for K-Morris?
Yeah, well, in theory, that would be the move. Yeah, I'm not going to make that move in Game Week 9, but I'll probably price out of Watkins by then. But that is a move that I could consider. Okay, well, anyway, so we have Watkins with 23 points. He Johnstone, Cowell, Trippier once again with 12. Ben White with the late goal in that match, if you remember, Brandon, the late Ben White goal, 14-pointer. Yeah. Martin Odegaard with 17, the kind of forgotten man because Saka's been so consistent good. But not for you, Brandon, because you're now an Odegaard owner. And
so the points, I think you said stop now.
You said something like season keeper no matter how many times he blanks in a row. So that's interesting to me. So you think if he goes 25 weeks in a row, you're going to keep him. That's impressive. You know, I think that's.
If I'm not captaining Odegaard in Game Week 38, then something's gone very wrong. Please call my wife.
Yeah, exactly. You've made a pact with him. You've got Dominguez with 10 points there. I feel like I should remember who Dominguez is, and why am I not remembering? Is Dominguez? Is that a Liverpool
looks like he
player?
Plays for Forest there, judging by the kit.
It's very similar to the Liverpool kit. Another situation. There we go. Dominguez, Nicholas Dominguez, finished with a goal and 3 bonus.
Sure. The first fictional character appears in the Kings of the Game Week. The scriptwriter's having a blast here.
Feels like a video game name. Dominguez. Yeah, just like throw a name in there. Anderson once again. So the third time now that Anderson has popped up on this team of the game. And again, it's in a sense, it's a little fluky because he's it's not like we're talking about like Trent here. And I think he's primarily a center back, right? I'm not wrong about that, am I? He's not a fullback, is he, Anderson?
He's very much a center back. He's just like a ball playing center back. He loves to make the raking pass.
Yeah. So it's a little fluky, but the thing about Anderson is that he's a good player. He's just yes. So it's not like if you bring him in, it's not like you're like chasing points or whatever, because he's a solid player on a solid defense. And the question is whether I don't know. I mean, it does feel like it's kind of weird. I mean, I guess they sort of made they made their choice, Brandon. They decided to they did, they had this kind of attacking moment and with Vieira, and it didn't quite work out, and they brought in Hodgson, and he totally righted the ship, but now they can't score. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like in their defense, they're not helped by the Olise injury as on top of the Eze injury now.
Yeah.
So they're missing arguably their two best. I mean, not arguably, factually, their two best attacking players.
Yeah. And Zaha left.
And Zaha leaving as well. So and Hodgson is pragmatic enough to now let's just keep it tight while we can. Yeah. And I think they've had a decent run of fixtures for a while. I don't think Crystal Palace are going to be some sort of magical Stoke City team where they're just going to test every team across the table. When the fixtures get tough, I think they're going to be leaking a lot more goals.
Man, they have 9 flagged players in their squad right now. That is kind of remarkable. They have 7 midfielders are currently flagged, which is that's pretty high. Like I said, Eze, Olise, Jefferson Lerma, who is quite a good player. Decore, Schlupp. I think Schlupp has gone off injured twice in the last couple of game weeks. But so kind of a tough run for them. But I mean, they looks like they're going to be completely fine this season, and they just had a really nice win away to Man United in this particular game week. So no. Don't worry about old Crystal Palace. In fact, you and I are going there, Brandon. I'm pretty excited. We got our tickets secured. So for Game Week 12, you and I will be watching. I am excited. I've always wanted to go to Selhurst Park. It's one of the places. It's kind of like Craven Cottage, Brandon, that I've always wanted to go to. And so really excited about that. Let us know if you're going to be at that match. They're hosting Everton that weekend.
Yeah, definitely. And that will be the day after our meetup on Friday, November 10th. Details to come. Right. So maybe we'll be a little hopefully sort of bleary-eyed. But hopefully maybe we can, for anybody who's in South London, we can meet up at a pub before or after the match and have a drink.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, Game Week 8, Brandon. Our final Kings of the Game Week review is the game week that just happened. We talked about it a lot at the start of the pod here, but Raheem Sterling, we talked about him too. He has one of his every 4 weeks. He's going to absolutely bang, and that's bang he did. Jack Harrison scored an awesome goal in this in the Everton match. That was
for those who weren't paying attention. Jack Harrison plays for Everton.
Yeah, I know that kind of snuck up on me a little bit too, but it was a great goal because it was. I mean, he must have been about 30 yards out, and it was kind of but it was like the keeper fell down. I don't think it was an exaggerated dive fall, but he just kind of fell down in the play, and Harrison gets the ball and just doesn't hesitate, right? I don't know if it's a volley or not. I don't think he takes a touch. I think it was a volley, but he just rips it, right? It was
He's a killer. Goal, that's what you love
goal.
About Jack Harrison, and I think Leeds fans must have appreciated about him is he is a killer when it comes. He'll screw up, and he's not going to the World Cup anytime soon, but he's got that killer instinct, and I love him for it.
There's Ben White again. I guess he was priced appropriately. When he came in at 5.5, I feel like we all got a little turned off by it. He would have been the most owned player in the game if he was $5 million, or would have been going into the season. Maybe Holland.
What if instead of a budget, FPL gave you, they give you a budget and you get a certain number of king spots, and maybe if White it comes in priced as a king, but I know I've got a king spot to fill, I'm more likely to have Ben White. I'm still trying to work out the details of this.
Yeah, maybe you got to move.
System.
If you move your pawn all the way to the end of the board, you get to convert one of your 4 million defenders.
I'm going to turn. I'm going to turn Gahey into Ben White.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of guys I like in this Game Week 8 squad. Salah, McTominay. Who doesn't love McTominay? Jack Harrison. I'm glad to see Cole Palmer get minutes. It feels like that's a fun. It was always going to be a struggle, especially with Alvarez emerging too, for him to get serious minutes at Man City, and so it's nice to see. He's on pens apparently. Yeah. That was news to me. So
Palmer plays. Palmer scores. You love it.
Yeah. And then Isak, another player that to watch him he's just a really fun player to watch. And he's terrific. So a fun Game Week 8. I finished on 43 points. The best possible team had 136, Brandon. So I was just a little shy, 90,
wee bit off,
93 points shy there, but that's fine. That's going to happen sometimes. And Mark Gay, he's in the squad too. I like him too. So Brandon, even though it didn't work out as I hoped for Game Week 8, I like seeing this team of guys that I like, and it's a nice way to end this week's discussion.
That's like why we watch sports, to see people at the top of their game get together and perform at the top level. And what I also like about the Kings of the Game Week is there isn't a ref of the Game Week. So the less we can feature the refs, the better, in my opinion. So that's another reason to love this segment. Yeah, there you have it. So I think that gives us a fair amount of food for thought in terms of where is the season now? It took us like an hour plus to get through all those game weeks. But if you just sort of like digest that information, take it in, you'll start to understand, all right, these are the names that I should be cycling around through the international break, to give you a sense of what transfers do I need to make now? Maybe what transfers should I be thinking about making a couple weeks from now? Who did I not think of? Crystal Palace is, I guess, that's the thing that jumps out to me most, is something that I am not respecting enough. What was the one team or player that jumped out to you throughout these 8 weeks?
Yeah. I think you're right about Palace. It's just that Palace defense. It felt like practically every week they were popping up in the Kings of the Game Week, and I think obviously Newcastle too. I think they're that rough run of fixtures to start the season, and then I made it hard to kind of go all in on them. But I think most of us are doubled up or getting there with that defense, and I think that's something that it's just increasingly clear beginning kind of in Game Week 5. It's just like there they are again and again and again and again. Of course, even in Game Week 8, I suppose Trippier did give an assist and 2 bonus. So even in a match where they conceded 2 goals, he still finished with 6 points.
So this is a argument I was having with our Patreon supporter D Sigel. Is Trippier worth the money? Well, I don't know if we have a definitive answer on that just yet, but for attacking returns on the bounce, if you include the PSG Champions League match in which Trippier also got an assist. So the guy is in form right now, and that can't be denied.
Yeah, no, it's true. And we saw it last season with him. And I felt like he was too expensive going into the year, but he's not at the moment. That's for sure. In terms of, I have like no way to get him in, unfortunately. Yeah. So I feel like I'm still on the outside looking in with him a little bit, but this happens every year. I mean, every year you're going to have one player who is highly owned that you just can't fit for one reason or another. And it's part of the game. Wouldn't be fun if you didn't kind of have a little variety there, but so we'll see. I don't know how maybe eventually I just have to like cut my losses and get him, but I kind of feel like as long as I have Salah, I'm probably going to be stuck with Trippier. So that's where we are. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back next Sunday with our Game Week 9 preview, and look ahead a little bit, see who's been injured over the international break. There's always somebody. So
fingers crossed.
Well, once again, if you enjoy the podcast, you want to support the cheaters, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You can find us all over the place: Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Brandon. That's one thing that we are trying very slowly. It's like moving that rock up the hill, Brandon. It's what's that song? That keep going up that hill. That's what we're doing. I'm sort of mixing Sisyphus and what's her name?
Kate Bush.
Yeah, and Kate Bush here a little bit, but Kate Sisyphus.
Sisyphus Bush. I like that as a
Sisyphus
band
Bush.
name.
That sounds like a college rock band for sure. Yeah, Sisyphus Bush. All right. Well, anyway. If you're a YouTube person, find us and follow us on there. We will be doing more live content as the season goes on. Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Of course. As always, big thanks to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wegner, Lodall, Nick Wright, Lazaros Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Valger Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Herzig, Heath Cram, Thomas Tislov, Noah Louise, Travis Grant, Julio Pena, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Fro Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lolly, and Ben Coombs. That was an error-free reading of all the producers. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts if you like error-free readings of producer names. Follow us wherever you get your social media. Visit our website at alwayscheating.com. Josh, I'm really looking forward to Wales playing somebody this during the next 2 weeks. So
they're always playing someone, aren't they? Yeah.
Leave it to Wales.
All right, well, leave it to Wales to play somebody. All right, well, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.